Hey there, English 155 students. Hopefully you've read Chapter 2. I just wanted to check in and add a couple of points to it. I think Chapter 2 is really important. Uh, every interview that I've been on, at some point they've asked me about working with others, teamwork, how do you handle group projects. And I think every job that I've had some kind of major project where I was relying on other individuals to help me complete the project or task at hand. Chapter 2 does a really nice job of sort of laying out the fundamentals of why groups are successful or why they fail. And I think everybody, whether from the workplace or in school, has their own group project horror story. Mine came sophomore year of college in a theater appreciation class, of all things. And my group had to present a scene from Macbeth, Shakespeare play, and we had a couple of weeks to put it together, and obviously we had to assign roles to each other. There was a director, and there wasn't much communication early on. People weren't. We never had a full group meeting, and roles as to who was going to contribute what weren't clearly laid out in the beginning, and it came down to those sort of last minute frustrating headaches and arguments when some feel that their role was not defined, what was expected of them was not clearly defined, who the leader of the group was really, it was up in the air. And I can look at Chapter 2 and realize how things failed early on. The advantages and disadvantages of group work is hopefully apparent. I think the disadvantages, we know the advantages, we kind of have collective ideas, more creativity, division of labor. The disadvantages that people don't really look at is that it takes a lot longer usually. Planning takes a lot of time. Collaborating takes a lot of time, and there can be conflict that you don't get when you're working by yourself. But I do want to touch base, and you can see on this I have this image of the cloud. I'm not sure why, but right there in red you see purpose, and I think it's often kind of assumed what the purpose was. So for my Macbeth group, it was to, present this scene from a Shakespeare play. But we really needed to talk about what was our purpose and goals as a group. Did we want an A? Did we want a B? How were we going to accomplish these things? And I should have had that conversation with some of my classmates, because there might be a group member that says, hey, I'm happy with a C, or I can only contribute this, and sort of figure out what your team members can contribute, how they can help, and what their goals are is a really important conversation to have before you even start. And this will help you get to learn a little bit about each other, the strengths and weaknesses, and help you in the planning stages when you're deciding on group roles. Group roles is really important. The book talks about sort of task-oriented roles and team maintenance roles. And I want to highlight the team maintenance roles. You guys will have a group project coming up, and that team maintenance role is more than just the group leader. It may take the shape of a note taker, or a team maintenance role might be a kind of liaison that works to figure out where people are on certain tasks and report them back to the team leader, or collate materials as people are working on things. But if you can clearly define tasks, right, even down to the person who is going to manage time and keep people on track. That was another downside of groups, is that they get off track, don't they? And it's nice to have somebody say, hey, I'm going to be the person that, as soon as I see we're getting off track, I'm going to redirect us back to the project. So to have these conversations early on, what is our overall goal? How will we achieve this? What will we each contribute? Are important conversations to have. I had this funny video. I'll post this. You can watch this, but this is from The Office, and he's talking about Wikipedia, which sort of reminded me of stuff we were talking about in Chapter 1. Here's my favorite duo, Batman and Robin. I'm a big comic book fan, if you guys haven't been able to tell already, but I do like the fact that one is sort of the leader and the other is a sidekick, and there's usually no problem with that. They understand their role and what they're contributing to this team. Even Alfred, if you want to incorporate the butler. And it's not to say that there won't be conflicts, but if you have that communication, early on and throughout that the project or task that you're going through, you'll be able to resolve them. And you can resolve things by always coming back to the shared goal. Okay, so when there's difference, you have to step back and say, okay, ultimately we are all working towards X, right? Presenting this scene and getting an A or whatever it is. And that's when you can start to make concessions, right? Can you concede something or compromise and still achieve this shared goal? That's where you're putting the team and the shared goal before your sort of self-serving goals. Some other things that I listed in addition to types of roles: bylaws, status checks, timelines. It's really great to make project goals that say, okay, we're going to have this accomplished by Sunday night, and then this next section accomplished by Monday night, and everybody's going to email their work to this person who is going to put it together, and you have to get it by this time. And you can have consequences as well, right? If you fail to contribute, your name will be withheld from the project or whatever it is. I like this. This was from the World Health Organization. And it's kind of a playful infographic, but their top 10 goals, right, from 2000 to 2015, and they've listed them. It's nice to have a list of what are we out to accomplish. Meeting productivity, how do you make it work? And that's be organized, right? Have an agenda for a meeting, have goals. The biggest tip I can give you before you conclude any kind of meeting, have next steps, right? So what are we doing when we leave this meeting? What am I working on when I go home? And when is it due? Chapter 2 also talks a little bit about nonverbal, but the last thing I want to talk about was listening skills and types of listening. And the textbook breaks it down to content listening, empathetic listening, and critical listening. Okay, content listening is really what is the speaker trying to say. Okay, it's just the message. And this is really the first kind of listening that you have to do. You have to understand what they're saying before you can respond to it. And so every so often we're kind of formulating our own thoughts and our own responses, and while that's happening, we stop listening to what somebody's saying. Taking notes helps. Okay, and one way I improved my listening skills was just to write down the content. What are they saying? And then I can respond back to it later. Empathetic is deals with feelings and emotions, and it's understanding somebody's frustration, their confusion, the difficulty that they're having, and being a sympathetic ear. The final method of listening is the one that we probably always do. It's critical. It's when we are responding back and evaluating somebody's message. And that's helpful too, right? Somebody has an idea and you want to respond back because you have a better plan. What I do advocate, though, is to acknowledge the speaker's content first by reiterating what they've said. Okay, so for example, if you're telling me about how we should best direct the scene, I can respond by saying, I can see what you mean here, how this might work well approaching the scene from this angle. However, what about if we did this? Okay, so it just shows the listener that, or the speaker, that I've acknowledged their idea and I did in fact listen to them, and hopefully that avoids some conflict. I thought there was some really interesting kind of facts and figures in Chapter 2 about the listening process that you'll probably remember about half of what's said during a 10-minute conversation and forget half of that within 48 hours. And that just reinforces the need to have some kind of note taker. At our faculty meetings, somebody takes what are called minutes, but are essentially shorthand notes of the entire meeting, and they email them out afterwards, and it's a nice reminder. So you will have a group project coming up in the future. Here's some nonverbal images that I thought that were kind of interesting, but I want you to start thinking about group work, and if you're feeling very conscientious, you can go to the forums and start a new topic about teamwork, and you can post your group project horror stories or success stories. And I think the most important thing is learning about how you can learn from past experiences to ensure that your next group challenge goes along a little easier. So that's chapter 2 in a nutshell, and I look forward to hearing from you guys. Thanks.